Sure, this is what they call a light 6-pounder. It's made out of bronze, and it has a seamless steel liner for safety. Weighs about 650 pounds without the carriage. With the carriage, the whole thing comes in about 1,500 pounds. And this is a replica of a British cannon. And this particular one was cast by the foundry that cast the cannons for the National Park Service. This cannon was cast about 1974, and it's a reproduction of a 1755, what they call light 6-pounder. And 6-pounder simply means that it fires a 6-pound iron ball. That was the standard projectile for 18th century cannon. The effective range of a cannon like this would have been a mile, 3/4 of a mile to a mile. And it would have been used with the infantry troops, maneuvered on the battlefield by men, of course at long distances by a team of horses. But it would be maneuvered and worked with the foot troops to best advantage, used at long distance compared with the musket fire that would have been probably at 100 or 125 yards. They would have had probably a crew of 15 people to serve a gun like this. A crew of 4 can fire it, but in order to maneuver the gun, advance it and retreat it and so forth, it would be a much larger crew.
Well, right now what we're demonstrating is some of the 18th century life of what would be like on campaign. And with the Royal Irish, we were more, we went to wherever the king would pay us, or whoever would pay us the most. Today we have quite a bit of meat on the grill, which is out of the norm, because usually most of the time people during the 18th century were vegetarians. And they would have more of a smoked meat or vegetables and things like that. But we figured, well, it's fun to demonstrate the actual cooking of the 18th century style. Trying to show some of our artifacts that we use when we're cooking and demonstrating how we would use a Dutch oven, since we don't have an actual oven, and we can bake potatoes and bake some pies and do it the old 18th century way.
This is a period blunderbuss. It's made with a bronze tube, and it would fire a 69 or a 75 caliber ball, depending on the bore of this gun. It's flint, piece of flint that's used to strike a hardened piece of steel. It would scratch out a piece of steel, and it would be a burning ember that would drop into the pan to ignite the powder. The powder would go in the pan, would burn through the little touch hole here, and set off the charge that's in the barrel and fire the musket ball in the direction you want it to. Sometimes it would just spark, the powder in the pan would ignite, and it would just get a puff of smoke, and the musket wouldn't go off, and they would call that a flash in the pan. That's where they came with that term. So a lot of times the powder that we used in that time, in the 18th century, was only about 60% effective. It was a lot of garbage mixed in with it. Modern powders are about 85% effective. So we're already ahead of the game. We don't have as many misfires as they did back then. The other thing is black powder is very susceptible to temperature and humidity. So it fouls the gun. It becomes very foul. So a lot of times you'd go to shoot, you get no spark, or the powder wouldn't go off. A lot of problems with firing a gun, especially in rainy weather or in the summer with the humidity. And most of the flintlocks were all basically the same type. You'd have different size locks here, smaller ones for pistols. Rifles would be smaller ones. As you get bigger into the military muskets, the lock get bigger, and the flint would be wider and bigger to create more of a spark. If it was double the width of a pistol, you had twice as many chances of actually igniting the musket. You would put powder in here, you would close the frizzen, you would cast the gun about, pour powder in here, and then the musket ball, and with a ramrod you'd ram it home, and it would pack it in at the bottom to fire. This blunderbuss has a a flared barrel. A lot of people think that the flared barrel spreads the charge or the shot out. It doesn't. It's flared for ease of loading the gun. If a sailor was in the rigging, he could load the gun a lot easier because he has a funnel built onto the gun. If he was in a boat, on horseback, whatnot, they could load the gun a lot quicker by having a funnel effect, especially in a moving, when it's back and forth. So that was for ease of loading, and that was the only reason it was. So we're going to go through the loading and firing a round. I have a cartridge here, and since we're doing it for safety, there is no musket ball in it. There would have been a musket ball at the bottom of the cartridge. They would rip the cartridge open. It was made of Bible papers, is one of the types of, they used on the cartridges. You would take some powder and pour it in the pan. That's your priming charge. The rest of it would be poured down the muzzle. Now, if I had a musket ball, I'd put that in, and then I'd ram that home. So that would be, now the musket is loaded, and if I was in a line with a bunch of other people, I'd be waiting for my commands. So, yep, see? This is a Brown Bess. This was the standard arm of the King George's troops in the French and Indian Wars and in the Revolutionary War. They actually used it in 1812, the battles of 1812. And right up, some of these muskets survived and were used by the Confederates in the Civil War. They modified them then and they take percussion instead of the flint. Now this is basically the same as the other gun. It's a lot longer, as you can see. And where your powder goes in the muzzle, you see it's a lot smaller. So if I was on board ship, I'd have a lot of trouble trying to load this if it was on a moving ship. Now, this gun fires exactly the same way as the other one did. And you would load the cartridges the same way. I'll do that. This one fires a 75 caliber bullet, which weighs just about an ounce. That's a lot of lead. And you would do what they call cast about, pour the powder down here. Now this ramrod would be used to push the ball all the way down, and it has to be packed down the bottom with no space. Because if you have a big space there, you have a problem, the gun may blow up on you. Return the rammer, and you would make ready, and on the command, fire. And that would fire. Now, they could fire this 5 times in a minute, which was pretty good.
Yeah!